In the heart of Los Angeles, where luxury boutiques lined the streets like jewels in a crown, there was a small but prestigious watch store that attracted some of the wealthiest and most famous people in the world. The shop had polished marble, floors, glass display cases that sparkled under soft lighting, and an air of exclusivity that made anyone stepping inside feel as though they were entering another realm. Among the employees who worked there was a young man named Mark. He wasn't flashy or loud. Instead, he blended into the background with his simple clothes and quiet demeanor. To most customers, he was just another salesperson, someone whose job was to assist them in finding the perfect timepiece. Mark's life wasn't glamorous. Every day he stood behind those gleaming counters, helping people choose watches that cost more than what he earned in months. Yet despite the disparity between his income and the products he sold, Mark never complained. He carried himself with humility and grace, always ready to offer a warm smile or thoughtful advice. His co-workers sometimes teased him about how he could sell such expensive items without ever dreaming of owning one himself, but Mark would simply shrug it off, saying he didn't need those things to be happy. What mattered to him was doing his job well and taking care of the people who depended on him. One sunny afternoon, as Mark straightened the displays and wiped down the counters, the door chimed softly, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Looking up, he saw a man walk in wearing dark sunglasses and a leather jacket. At first glance, the visitor seemed unremarkable, blending in with the other shoppers who frequented the area. But something about him caught Mark's attention. There was a certain ease in the way he moved, a calm confidence that set him apart from the usual crowd. It took only a few seconds for Mark to realize who this man was. Keanu Reeves, the actor known not only for his iconic roles in movies but also for his reputation as one of Hollywood's nicest guys. Mark felt a flicker of excitement but quickly pushed it aside. Celebrity or not, Keanu was still a customer, and Mark's job was to make sure he felt welcome. With a polite smile, Mark approached him. "Good afternoon, sir," he said warmly. "Is there anything I can help you find today?" Keanu removed his sunglasses, revealing kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled back. "Hey, thanks," he replied in his trademark laid-back tone. "I'm just looking around. These watches are pretty impressive." As Keanu began browsing the cases, Mark stayed close by, ready to answer any questions. They chatted casually about the different brands and models, discussing craftsmanship and design. Keanu seemed genuinely interested, pausing occasionally to admire a particular piece. Eventually, his gaze settled on a stunning luxury watch, a sleek, gold-plated masterpiece that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light of the store. "This one's nice," Keanu remarked, pointing to the watch. "What do you think?" Mark nodded enthusiastically. "It's definitely one of our finest pieces," he explained. "The detailing is incredible, and it's built to last a lifetime. A lot of our clients love it." Keanu tilted his head, studying the watch thoughtfully. Then, turning to Mark, he asked a question that caught the young employee off guard. "Do you own a watch like this?" For a moment, Mark hesitated. He hadn't expected such a personal question, especially from someone like Keanu. But then again, the actor had a way of making people feel comfortable, as if they were old friends sharing stories over coffee. Taking a deep breath, Mark decided to answer honestly. "No, I don't," he admitted with a slight laugh. "To be honest, watches like these are way out of my price range. I mean, working here doesn't exactly pay enough to afford them." Keanu raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Mark's candid response. Most people might have felt embarrassed admitting something like that, but Mark spoke with complete sincerity. There was no bitterness or resentment in his voice, just a matter-of-fact acceptance of his situation. Sensing there was more to the story, Keanu leaned against the counter, folding his arms casually. "That must be tough," he said gently. "Seeing all these amazing things every day but knowing you can't have them." Mark shrugged, brushing off the comment with a modest grin. "It's part of the job, I guess. Besides, I don't really need stuff like that anyway. Watches are nice, sure, but they're not what's important to me." His words hung in the air, leaving Keanu curious. What was important to this young man? Why did he work so hard selling items he couldn't dream of owning? For now, Keanu didn't ask. Instead, he thanked Mark for his help and left the store, the image of the gold watch lingering in his mind. But even more so, the impression Mark had made on him. Later that evening, as Keanu drove home, he found himself thinking about their conversation. Something about Mark's attitude had struck a chord deep within him. In a world obsessed with wealth and status, here was someone who didn't seem fazed by material possessions. Mark's honesty and humility reminded Keanu of values he held dear, values rooted in authenticity and kindness. Yet, there was still a mystery surrounding the young employee. Why was he content with his modest lifestyle? What motivated him to work so hard without expecting much in return? These questions lingered in Keanu's mind, refusing to let go. Little did he know the answers would lead to a connection neither of them could have anticipated, and a moment of generosity that would change both their lives forever. The next few days passed quietly for Mark, as they usually did. He went about his routine at the boutique, assisting customers, organizing displays, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Yet despite the calm rhythm of his work, he couldn't shake the memory of his conversation with Keanu Reeves. It wasn't every day that a Hollywood star walked into the store, let alone engaged him in such a genuine and thoughtful way. Mark had met plenty of celebrities before, some polite, others distant, but Keanu was different. There was something about the actor's warmth and curiosity that left a lasting impression. As for Keanu, the encounter stayed with him too. Back in his own world, a whirlwind of movie sets, interviews, and public appearances, he found himself reflecting on their brief interaction more often than he expected. Mark's words echoed in his mind. Watches are nice, sure, but they're not what's important to me. What was important to Mark? Why would someone willingly dedicate so much energy to selling items they could never afford themselves? These questions lingered like an unsolved puzzle, tugging at Keanu's thoughts during moments of downtime. It wasn't long before fate brought them together again. A week after their first meeting, Keanu returned to the boutique. This time, however, there was no entourage or cameras following him. He strolled in casually, wearing jeans and a plain black t-shirt, blending seamlessly with the other shoppers. When he spotted Mark behind the counter, he gave a small wave and approached with a friendly smile. "Hey, it's good to see you again," Keanu said, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Mark looked up, surprised but pleased to see the actor once more. "Not at all," he replied with a grin. "What brings you back here?" Keanu glanced around the store, pretending to browse the watches for a moment before turning back to Mark. "Actually, I came to talk to you," he admitted. "If you've got a minute, maybe we could grab some coffee nearby. I'd like to hear more about what you mentioned last time." Mark blinked, caught off guard by the request. "Coffee? Sure, I guess. Let me just check with my manager real quick." After getting approval, he grabbed his jacket and followed Keanu out of the store. They walked side by side down the busy street, weaving through crowds until they reached a cozy cafe tucked away on a quieter corner. The atmosphere inside was warm and inviting, with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Once they settled into a table near the window, Keanu leaned forward slightly, his expression open and curious. "So," he began, "you said watches aren't what's important to you. Tell me, what is important?" Mark hesitated, unsure how to respond. He hadn't expected Keanu to take such an interest in his life, especially since they barely knew each other. But there was something about the actor's sincerity that made him feel comfortable opening up. Taking a deep breath, Mark decided to share a piece of his story. "Well," he started slowly, "it's not really about me. It's about my sister." Keanu nodded encouragingly, urging him to continue. Mark explained that his younger sister, Emily, had been diagnosed with a rare illness several years ago. Her condition required frequent hospital visits, expensive medications, and specialized treatments that were often difficult to access. Their parents had passed away when they were young, leaving Mark as Emily's primary caregiver. With no other family members to rely on, he took on the responsibility of ensuring she received the best care possible. It hasn't been easy, Mark admitted, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. There are times when it feels overwhelming, you know. But seeing her smile, knowing she's getting better little by little, it makes everything worth it. He paused, looking down at his hands as if gathering his thoughts. That's why I work so hard. Every paycheck goes toward her medical bills. Watches and fancy things don't matter to me because none of that helps Emily get better. Keanu listened intently, his eyes soft with empathy. He understood hardship all too well. His own life had been marked by loss and challenges, from the tragic deaths of loved ones to navigating the pressures of fame. Hearing Mark's story resonated deeply with him, reminding him of the strength it takes to face adversity while still finding purpose in life. After a moment of silence, Keanu spoke. You're doing something incredible, Mark. Not everyone would put themselves through that kind of sacrifice for someone else. It says a lot about who you are. His words carried weight, spoken with genuine admiration. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unused to receiving praise for something he considered simply part of being a brother. Thanks, he muttered, scratching the back of his neck. But honestly, I don't think of it as a sacrifice. I love my sister. She's the most important person in my life. If I can help her, then that's all that matters. Their conversation continued for another hour, shifting between lighter topics and deeper reflections. By the end of it, Keanu felt as though he'd gained not just insight into Mark's life, but also a renewed sense of perspective. Here was a man who embodied resilience and selflessness, qualities Keanu deeply respected. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Keanu shook Mark's hand firmly, promising to stay in touch. Walking away, Keanu knew he wanted to do more than just understand Mark's situation. He wanted to help. But he also knew that offering assistance outright might come across as intrusive or even patronizing. No, this called for subtlety and thoughtfulness. Over the next few days, Keanu began laying the groundwork for a plan, one that would honor Mark's dignity while providing meaningful support. Little did Mark realize his quiet act of devotion to his sister was about to inspire a chain of events that would change both their lives in unexpected ways. Over the next few days, Keanu couldn't stop thinking about Mark and his story. It wasn't just the details of Emily's illness or the sacrifices Mark made that stayed with him. It was the quiet strength in the way Mark spoke about it all. There was no bitterness, no resentment, only a deep sense of love and responsibility. Keanu admired that kind of resilience. In a world where so many people chased wealth and fame for themselves, here was someone who worked tirelessly, not for personal gain but to help someone else. Keanu knew he wanted to do something meaningful, but he didn't want to rush into anything. He understood how delicate situations like this could be. Offering help without considering the other person's feelings might come across as condescending or even embarrassing. So instead of acting impulsively, Keanu decided to take his time and think carefully about how he could make a real difference in Mark's life. And by extension, Emily's. The first step was learning more. Keanu reached out to some trusted friends who worked in healthcare and charitable organizations. He asked questions about rare illnesses similar to what Emily had been diagnosed with, seeking advice on how best to support patients and their families. His friends were surprised by his sudden interest but quickly realized how serious he was. They provided him with resources, names of specialists, and information about programs designed to assist people facing overwhelming medical costs. Armed with this knowledge, Keanu began forming a plan. Meanwhile, back at the boutique, Mark continued his routine as usual. Life hadn't changed much since his coffee meeting with Keanu. Customers came and went, and he did his best to assist them, while keeping his mind focused on work. Still, he found himself wondering if Keanu would actually follow through on his promise to stay in touch. Celebrities often said things like that, offering kind words or vague promises, but deep down, Mark assumed they rarely meant it. After all, why would someone as busy and famous as Keanu Reeves remember a random guy from a watch store? But then, one afternoon, everything changed. A woman walked into the boutique wearing a crisp business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. She introduced herself as Karen, an assistant working closely with Keanu. At first, Mark thought she might be there to buy a gift or handle some errand for her boss. But when she asked to speak with him privately, his curiosity turned to confusion. They stepped into a quiet corner of the store, away from prying ears. Karen explained that Keanu had been deeply moved by their conversation and wanted to find a way to support Mark and Emily. "He doesn't want you to worry about finances anymore," Karen said gently. "Mr. Reeves has arranged for a substantial bonus to be added to your salary. It's already been approved by your manager." Mark stared at her, completely stunned. "A bonus? For me?" he stammered. "But why?" Karen smiled warmly. "Because Keanu believes in recognizing hard work and kindness, and because he knows how much you're doing for your sister." Before Mark could respond, Karen handed him an envelope containing documents outlining the details of the arrangement. The amount listed inside was far more than Mark had ever imagined earning. It would cover months' worth of Emily's treatments and ease the constant financial strain that weighed heavily on his shoulders. At first, Mark refused to accept it. "I can't take this," he insisted, shaking his head firmly. "It's too much. I don't deserve it." But Karen patiently explained that it wasn't charity. It was a gesture of gratitude for his dedication and character. "Keanu wants to show you that good people are noticed and appreciated," she said. "This is his way of saying thank you." Despite his protests, Mark eventually agreed to accept the bonus, though reluctantly. He felt uneasy about receiving such generosity, but he also knew it would make a tremendous difference for Emily. As soon as he got home that evening, he called his sister to share the news. Emily listened quietly, her voice trembling with emotion when she finally spoke. "Mark, you've done so much for me already," she whispered. "Are you sure this is okay?" "It's more than okay," Mark replied, trying to sound confident, despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. "This will give us a chance to breathe a little easier. You focus on getting better. I'll take care of the rest." While arranging the bonus was a significant step, Keanu wasn't finished. Yet, using his connections in the entertainment industry and beyond, he reached out to top medical specialists who specialized in treating conditions like Emily's. Within days, Keanu managed to secure discounted consultations and access to cutting-edge treatments that would otherwise have been out of reach. He ensured that every detail was handled discreetly, making sure Mark and Emily felt supported rather than overwhelmed. When Mark learned about these additional efforts, he was speechless. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined someone like Keanu going to such lengths to help him. Gratitude swelled in his chest, but so did a sense of humility. All he had done was live his life the best way he knew how, working hard, loving his sister, and staying true to himself. Yet somehow those simple actions had inspired another person to go above and beyond. As weeks passed, the impact of Keanu's kindness became undeniable. Emily's health began improving thanks to the new treatments, and the financial burden that had once loomed over Mark started to lift. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a future where he wasn't constantly worrying about money. He still worked hard at the boutique, but now there was a lightness in his step, a hopefulness he hadn't felt before. Word of Keanu's generosity spread slowly but surely. Employees at the boutique talked about it in hushed tones, amazed by the actor's thoughtfulness. Some customers even heard snippets of the story and shared it with others, turning it into a quiet legend within the luxury retail community. People admired not just the act itself, but the sincerity behind it. Keanu hadn't sought recognition or praise. He had simply acted out of compassion, proving that even small gestures could create ripples of change. For Mark, the experience transformed not only his circumstances but also his outlook on life. He realized that sometimes the universe sends reminders that humanity is capable of extraordinary kindness. Even in moments of struggle, there are people who care enough to step in and offer a helping hand. And for Keanu, the encounter reinforced his belief in the power of empathy and connection. Their paths may have crossed briefly, but the bond they formed left an indelible mark on both their hearts, a testament to the beauty of selflessness and understanding in an often chaotic world. As weeks turned into months, the changes in Mark's life became more noticeable, not just to him but to everyone around him. The weight that had once pressed down on his shoulders began to lift, and it showed in the way he carried himself. His coworkers at the boutique noticed the subtle shift first. He smiled more often, laughed a little louder, and seemed less weighed down by the invisible burdens he used to carry. Even customers commented on how approachable and cheerful he was, though they didn't know the full story behind his renewed energy. Emily's health continued to improve, thanks to the new treatments Keanu had helped arrange. Her progress wasn't immediate or miraculous. It came in small, steady steps, but each improvement felt like a victory. She started regaining her strength, spending less time in bed and more time enjoying simple pleasures like reading books, taking short walks, and even painting again. For years, illness had stolen pieces of her life, but now she was slowly reclaiming them. Watching her transformation filled Mark with a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Despite all the positive changes, Mark struggled with feelings of guilt. He couldn't shake the idea that he hadn't earned the blessings coming his way. Every time he thought about the bonus Keanu had arranged or the connections that led to Emily's improved care, he felt uneasy. "I'm just doing my job," he would tell himself over and over. "Why does someone like Keanu Reeves care so much about me?" It wasn't vanity or pride, it was humility. Mark genuinely believed he wasn't special enough to deserve such generosity. One evening, after finishing his shift at the boutique, Mark decided to write Keanu a letter. He sat at his kitchen table, pen in hand, staring at the blank page for several minutes before finally starting. "Dear Mr. Reeves," he began, his handwriting neat but slightly shaky. "I don't know where to start except to say thank you. What you've done for me and my sister is something I'll never forget. You didn't have to do any of this, but you did anyway, and I can't express how grateful I am." He paused, tapping the pen against the paper as he thought about what else to say. Writing letters wasn't something he did often, and he wanted to make sure his words conveyed exactly how he felt. After a moment, he continued, "But I also want you to know that I feel undeserving. Not because I don't appreciate your kindness. I do, more than you'll ever know. But because I don't understand why you chose to help us. We're just ordinary people living ordinary lives. Yet somehow, you saw something in me worth supporting. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to live up to that." Mark folded the letter carefully and tucked it into an envelope, unsure if he'd actually send it. Part of him worried that Keanu might see it as unnecessary or overly emotional. But another part of him felt compelled to express his gratitude, no matter how awkward or vulnerable it made him feel. Eventually, he dropped the letter in the mail, hoping it would reach Keanu without causing any trouble. To Mark's surprise, Keanu responded within days. The actor sent a handwritten note back, brief but heartfelt. "Mark," it read, "you don't need to explain yourself to me. Sometimes people cross our paths and remind us of what truly matters: kindness, resilience, and love. That's what you did for me. Don't question whether you deserved this. Instead, focus on making the most of it. Keep being the amazing person you are and let that ripple effect touch others too." Reading those words brought tears to Mark's eyes. For the first time, he allowed himself to fully accept the gift Keanu had given, not just the financial support or medical assistance, but the validation of his efforts. Someone out there saw his struggles and acknowledged his sacrifices, and that meant more than anything money could buy. Meanwhile, Keanu found himself reflecting on the impact of his actions as well. Helping Mark and Emily hadn't been about gaining recognition or praise, it was simply something he felt called to do. Still, seeing the tangible results of his efforts reminded him of the power of compassion. In Hollywood, where fame and fortune often overshadowed genuine human connection, moments like this stood out as rare and precious. Keanu realized that while he couldn't solve every problem or fix every broken situation, he could still make a difference, one person at a time. Word of their story spread quietly, touching the lives of those who heard it. Employees at the boutique shared bits of the tale during breaks, marveling at Keanu's thoughtfulness. Customers whispered about it as they browsed the displays, inspired by the idea that celebrities weren't always disconnected from reality. Some even wrote online reviews praising not just the store, but the humanity behind its staff and supporters. Slowly, the narrative grew beyond the walls of the boutique, becoming a symbol of hope and kindness in unexpected places. For Mark, the experience reshaped not only his present but also his future. He began dreaming bigger, not for himself but for Emily and others facing similar challenges. Inspired by Keanu's example, he started volunteering at local charities that supported families dealing with medical hardships. On weekends, he visited hospitals, talking to caregivers and patients alike, sharing his story in the hopes of offering encouragement. He knew firsthand how isolating it could feel to shoulder the burden of illness alone, and he wanted to be a source of light for others navigating dark times. Emily noticed the change in her brother too. "You're different lately," she said, one afternoon as they sat together in their small apartment. "Happier, I think, like you believe things will work out." Mark nodded, smiling softly. "I guess I do," he admitted. "All these years I've been so focused on getting through each day that I forgot to look ahead. But now I see possibilities. Not just for us, but for everyone we meet along the way." Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. They spent more time laughing, planning outings, and imagining what life might look like when Emily was fully recovered. For the first time in years, they dared to dream of a future free from constant worry and fear. And though Mark knew challenges still lay ahead, he faced them with renewed determination, knowing he wasn't alone. Keanu, too, felt the ripple effects of his actions. While he had always valued authenticity and empathy, helping Mark deepened his understanding of just how far a single act of kindness could go. It reinforced his belief that everyone has the power to create change, no matter how big or small. Whether through grand gestures or quiet moments of support, the world becomes a better place when people choose to care. Though their lives remained separate, Mark and Keanu stayed connected through occasional messages and updates. Each exchange served as a reminder of the extraordinary bond they had formed. A bond built not on fame or wealth, but on shared humanity and mutual respect. Their story proved that sometimes the simplest acts of compassion leave the most lasting impressions, bridging gaps between strangers and turning fleeting encounters into lifelong lessons of love and gratitude. As the months went by, Mark's life continued to transform in ways he never thought possible. The financial relief brought on by Keanu's generosity gave him room to breathe for the first time in years. He no longer had to count every penny or stress over how he'd pay the next medical bill. Instead, he could focus on what truly mattered, supporting Emily and building a brighter future for both of them. But beyond the practical benefits, there was something deeper happening inside Mark. A shift in his perspective that changed how he saw himself and the world around him. Mark had always been a hard worker, but now he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that his sacrifices hadn't gone unnoticed, not just by Keanu, but by others who cared about him too. His co-workers at the boutique noticed his growing confidence and encouraged him to take on new responsibilities at work. One day, his manager pulled him aside and offered him a promotion. "You've earned it," she said with a smile. "Your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed." Though Mark initially hesitated, worrying that taking on more might distract from his duties to Emily, he eventually accepted the role, knowing it would provide even greater stability for their family. Emily's progress remained steady, though not without its ups and downs. There were days when her energy flagged or old symptoms returned, reminding them both that recovery was a journey, not a destination. Yet through it all, Emily remained determined to reclaim her independence. She started volunteering at a local library, helping organize books and assist patrons. It was a small step, but it gave her a sense of accomplishment and connection to the community. Seeing her thrive filled Mark with pride and reminded him why he had fought so hard for her all these years. Despite everything, Mark still struggled with feelings of inadequacy. He often wondered if he was doing enough, not just for Emily, but for the people whose lives he touched through his volunteer work. Every weekend, he visited hospitals and support groups, sharing his story and offering words of encouragement to caregivers and patients alike. At first, he felt nervous speaking in front of strangers, worried they wouldn't relate to his experiences. But as he spoke, he saw the impact his words had. People listened intently, nodding along or wiping away tears as they recognized pieces of their own struggles in his story. These moments taught Mark that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was a strength that could bring people together. One evening, after returning home from a hospital visit, Mark sat down at his kitchen table and opened his laptop. He had been thinking about writing a blog for some time, a place where he could share his journey openly and honestly. He titled the first post, "Finding Light in the Darkness," and began typing. "For years, I believed my job was to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders," he wrote. "I thought no one would understand what it meant to sacrifice everything for someone you love. But then, something unexpected happened. A stranger, an actor named Keanu Reeves, showed me that kindness exists in places we least expect. That moment changed everything." The blog quickly gained traction, drawing readers from all walks of life. Some commented to thank Mark for his honesty, while others shared their own stories of hardship and resilience. What started as a personal project became a platform for connection, inspiring countless people to keep going despite their challenges. Mark marveled at how his simple act of sharing his truth could spark such widespread hope. For someone who had once doubted his worth, this newfound recognition felt surreal yet deeply meaningful. Keanu, meanwhile, kept tabs on Mark's progress from afar. Though their interactions were infrequent, they exchanged messages regularly, checking in on each other's lives. Keanu loved hearing updates about Emily's health and Mark's growing confidence. He admired how Mark used his experience to inspire others, turning pain into purpose. In many ways, Mark reminded Keanu of himself, the quiet determination, the willingness to help without expecting anything in return. Their bond deepened with each conversation, becoming less about gratitude and more about mutual respect and friendship. Inspired by Mark's efforts, Keanu decided to amplify his impact. Further, using his influence, he partnered with organizations dedicated to supporting families affected by rare illnesses. Together, they launched a campaign aimed at raising awareness and funds for medical research. Keanu invited Mark to join him at an event celebrating the initiative, explaining that his story would resonate with others and encourage donations. At first, Mark was hesitant. Public speaking wasn't exactly his forte, but Keanu reassured him. "You don't need to be perfect," Keanu said. "Just be yourself. That's what people will connect with." The night of the event arrived, and Mark stood nervously backstage, clutching a note card with bullet points for his speech. When it was his turn to speak, he walked onto the stage to polite applause, his heart pounding in his chest. As he looked out at the crowd, he spotted Keanu sitting near the front, giving him an encouraging thumbs up. Taking a deep breath, Mark began to talk. He spoke about Emily, about the struggles they had faced together, and about the kindness of strangers who had helped them along the way. By the time he finished, the audience erupted into applause, moved by his sincerity and courage. That night marked a turning point for Mark. Standing on stage, sharing his story with hundreds of people, made him realize just how far he had come. From a humble watch salesman struggling to make ends meet, he had become a symbol of hope and resilience. The attention didn't change who he was. It simply highlighted the qualities he had always possessed: humility, perseverance, and an unwavering commitment to those he loved. In the weeks that followed, Mark and Keanu stayed in touch, discussing ideas for future projects and collaborations. They dreamed of creating a foundation that would provide direct assistance to families facing medical crises, ensuring that no one had to navigate such challenges alone. Both men understood that true change required more than individual acts of kindness. It needed systemic solutions that addressed the root causes of suffering. Through it all, Mark never forgot the lessons he had learned. He knew that life was unpredictable and full of challenges, but he also knew that compassion had the power to heal wounds and bridge divides. Whether through his blog, his volunteer work, or his friendship with Keanu, He vowed to continue spreading light wherever he could. And though their paths may have crossed by chance, the bond they forged proved that even the smallest moments of connection could lead to extraordinary outcomes. For Keanu, Mark's journey reinforced his belief in the ripple effect of kindness. In a world often consumed by negativity and division, their story served as a reminder that humanity shines brightest when we choose empathy over indifference. It wasn't fame or fortune that defined them. It was the choices they made to lift others up, proving that even in the darkest times, there is always room for hope. As time went on, Mark's life continued to evolve in ways that felt almost surreal. The foundation he and Keanu dreamed of became a reality, thanks to their combined efforts and the support of countless others who believed in their mission. They named it Light in the Shadows, a tribute to the idea that even in the darkest moments there is always hope. The organization focused on providing financial assistance, emotional support, and access to medical resources for families facing rare illnesses. It was more than just a charity. It was a lifeline for people who felt lost and overwhelmed. Mark threw himself into the work with passion and purpose. He traveled to different cities, meeting families and hearing their stories. Each visit reminded him of his own journey, reinforcing why this cause mattered so deeply to him. He saw himself in the weary eyes of caregivers and felt Emily's spirit in the resilience of patients fighting to reclaim their lives. Though the work was demanding, it filled him with a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced before. For the first time, he understood what it meant to truly make a difference, not just for one person, but for many. Keanu remained an integral part of the foundation, using his platform to raise awareness and funds. He attended events, gave interviews, and encouraged others to join the movement. But more importantly, he stayed connected to Mark, offering guidance and encouragement whenever needed. Their friendship grew stronger with each passing day, built not on fame or obligation, but on shared values and mutual respect. To Mark, Keanu wasn't just a celebrity or a benefactor. He was a friend who had changed the course of his life forever. Emily, too, played a vital role in the foundation's success. As her health improved, she became increasingly involved in its activities. She designed artwork for promotional materials, volunteered at events, and even started a blog of her own, where she wrote about living with illness and finding joy in small victories. Her voice resonated with readers, offering comfort and inspiration to those navigating similar challenges. Watching her thrive brought Mark immense pride, knowing that together, they were turning pain into purpose. Despite all the progress, Mark still faced moments of doubt. There were days when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming, when the enormity of the task ahead seemed insurmountable. But every time he wavered, he remembered Keanu's words. Focus on making the most of it. Those simple, yet powerful, words kept him grounded, reminding him that perfection wasn't the goal. Impact was. And as long as he was helping even one family find hope, his efforts were worthwhile. The ripple effects of their work spread far beyond what either of them could have imagined. Families who once felt isolated discovered a community of support through the foundation. Strangers reached out to share how Mark's story had inspired them to keep going during tough times. Donors pledged contributions, volunteers offered their time, and medical professionals donated expertise, all united by a common desire to create change. What began as a single act of kindness between two men had blossomed into a movement that touched lives across the country. One evening, after a particularly busy day at the foundation's headquarters, Mark sat down with Keanu over video call. They often checked in like this, catching up on projects and sharing updates about their personal lives. That night, however, the conversation took a reflective turn. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Keanu asked, leaning back in his chair. "I mean, look at everything you've accomplished. You've helped so many people." Mark smiled softly, shaking his head in disbelief. "Honestly, sometimes it feels like a dream. A few years ago, I was just a guy working at a watch store trying to get by. Now I'm doing something I never thought possible. It's crazy." "It's not crazy," Keanu replied firmly. "It's proof of what happens when good people come together. You didn't do this alone, Mark. None of us did. We leaned on each other, trusted each other, and made something beautiful out of hardship. Mark nodded, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He knew Keanu was right. Their journey hadn't been about individual achievements. It had been about connection. From the moment they met in that luxury boutique to the creation of Light in the Shadows, their paths had intertwined in ways neither of them could have predicted. Together, they had turned a chance encounter into a legacy of compassion and hope. As the months passed, Mark found joy in the little things, the laughter shared with Emily, the gratitude expressed by families helped by the foundation, the quiet satisfaction of knowing he was making a difference. Life wasn't perfect, and challenges still arose, but he faced them with a newfound confidence. He had learned that strength wasn't about carrying burdens alone. It was about reaching out, asking for help, and trusting that others would be there to lift you up. For Keanu, the experience reinforced his belief in the power of human connection. In a world often dominated by superficial interactions, he cherished the authenticity of his friendship with Mark. It reminded him that no matter how busy or successful someone becomes, the true measure of a life well lived lies in the impact we have on others. Through Mark, Keanu saw the best of humanity reflected back at him, a reminder of why kindness matters. Years later, when people asked Mark about his journey, he always started with the same story: a Hollywood actor walking into a watch store and changing everything. But he didn't stop there. He talked about the families they had helped, the friendships they had formed, and the lessons they had learned along the way. His message was simple, yet profound. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes it's hard. But if you stay true to yourself and open your heart to others, amazing things can happen. And as Mark stood on stage at another event surrounded by cheering supporters, he glanced over at Keanu sitting nearby. Their eyes met, and they exchanged a knowing smile, a silent acknowledgement of the incredible journey they had shared. Though their lives were vastly different, they were bound together by a bond forged in kindness and strengthened by purpose. Together, they had proven that even in the busiest, most chaotic corners of the world, there is always room for empathy, generosity, and love.